Well, the ignored Creator is rejected by most, and chapter after chapter of God's Word records that the Creator is known by only a few, ignored by many, and rejected by most. That's the bulk of the Old Testament. And so the Creator God sent spokesmen to speak for him called prophets, and they were either rejected or only temporarily heeded. I mean, you can think of them. Jonah temporarily oversaw a little revival in Nineveh, and then it went right back to a cult and murder and everything else. Daniel oversaw a little revival in Babylon, and then it went right back to idolatry and materialism. And the other prophets to Israel saw temporary responses, but the people went right back. So, the Creator himself comes to live on earth. And we've just crossed into Matthew. By the time we come to the New Testament, the same pattern continues. Few are knowing God or following him or obeying their Creator. So the Creator who has been ignored and rejected actually comes down to become a human. Christmas is the Creator becoming a human. And Christ's life on earth is recorded as a series of scenes of either people ignoring him or rejecting him, with a few interspersed precious scenes of people adoring, revering, and obeying him. But most don't. And that's the New Testament story. Starting with his birth, witnessed by a few wise shepherds, attended by a few wise men, testified by some enthused temple workers, Simeon and Anna. But by and large, the Creator is known by few, ignored by the many that are close enough to be even heard of him, and rejected by most. So the Creator introduces himself in person to his creatures. I mean, this is Jesus' ministry. After 30 years of living a life that no human had ever lived, the Creator in human flesh is heralded by the last and greatest prophet, John the Baptist, got the attention of the whole nation, and he pointed at Jesus. And boy, the crowds came, and soon they surged, and the people sniffed out Christ, and they got wowed. But then they slowly settled back into their own ways, not his. By the end of the mightiest ministry ever witnessed on earth, people were still yawning. So the New Testament Gospels end with the Creator ignored, then rejected. Not even the shriek of howling demons who cried out in dread when they faced their Creator and could move the people, neither could the parade of those healed, the lepers, the blind, the mute, the deaf, even the dead he raised. No one ever said his miracles didn't happen. All they said is, we don't want to revere and worship and obey him. No religious leader said he didn't do those miracles. Read carefully. They just didn't want to bow before him. Again, the Creator is known by so few, ignored by many, rejected by most. So the next event is the ignored and rejected Creator is murdered, and he came to give himself as a sacrifice for his fallen and dying creatures, so he does. He suffers shame and scorn before the cross, and then pain and suffering on the cross, and finally hanging there, as we saw on Thursday night, as Exodus said, with his arms outstretched. He becomes sin for us. That's one of the greatest, hard to comprehend events, that God made Jesus become our sin. God treated his Son, the Creator, as he hung on the cross like he had committed every sin we would ever commit. And as soon as he had suffered in that way, Christ died and his body was buried. And that finishes that much of the Bible. That's through Genesis 1 to John 19.